So welcome today to But Is It Learning? This is our Open Education Week session on game-based learning and some of the things that we've been doing at Sask Polytech. So welcome. I'd like to start today by acknowledging that Saskatchewan Polytechnic campuses are located on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territories, the traditional lands of the Cree, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, Saulteaux people, and the homelands of the Métis. We do respectfully thank the traditional custodians of this land and acknowledge the benefits gained from living and working in this place. Saskatchewan Polytechnic is committed to the renewal of relationships, Mio Wakotowin, and working towards a reconciled future where Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples participate and thrive equitably in all aspects of a society. If you want more information about indigenization practices, the library has several very good resources. We do take pride in that. So again, thank you for joining us today for this session. Just a couple little housekeeping details to get us going. My name is Katrina Matt. I'm actually the client service supervisor for the Saskatchewan Polytechnic Libraries in Saskatoon. So I work very closely with Justin and a little bit with Evan this year. Actually, I've started to see him some. We have the game-based learning lab in the Saskatoon Library, so it's a topic that we've talked a bit about in Saskatoon for sure. We are going to ask that you hold any questions to the end of the presentations, and we will have time for those questions after all three presenters have had their time. And we will also have a brief survey poll that will come out about 10 minutes before the end of the session. We do ask that you try and fill that out. Your feedback really helps us make sure that we can run events and meet what your needs are. So without further ado, I would like to kick us off and get started. We are going to start today with Justin Matheson. So he is a learning technology trainer at Saskatchewan Polytechnic here, and he's at the forefront of the integrated game-based learning practices, particularly with video games. He's done a lot of research in game-based learning, and he loves integrating his game-based learning knowledge into educational courses and programs, and we've seen quite a bit of it happening here this year. He merges his passions for video games and education, and he's actually seen some significant outcomes both here and in other workplaces using his strategies and his innovative teaching. His background was as an elementary school teacher, and he's coupled his experience in higher education and his understanding of learning and student engagement to start building a beautiful new road here at Sask Polytech with this game-based learning. So if you'd like to join me in welcoming Justin, I'm sure he's got some interesting things for us to hear.
Wow, thank you, Katrina. That was a wonderful introduction. I most certainly did not write that. That was fantastic. So I will share my screen and get started. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. I'm going to be talking today about game-based learning. And the first thing that I would like to talk about, this might be revisiting some information for some people. This might be new information. I'm going to talk about the difference between, oh, that's a little bit blurry. This is from an infographic. I'm going to share the infographic with everyone. I'll put the link in the chat after my little spiel is done. The difference between a game and game-based learning and gamification, because they are different. And oftentimes, game-based learning and gamification get used synonymously. However, they are two different educational concepts. Really quickly, using a simple example, hopscotch. Is there anybody here who is unfamiliar with hopscotch? Game that you draw on the ground. There are a lot of people with cameras off, so I'm just gonna continue along my merry way. Hopscotch is a game where you draw squares on the ground. I don't have to explain it. If I do have to explain it, somebody please stop me. I'm going to keep going. Hopscotch is a game. It is a game that has its own set of rules, it has its players, and it has an objective. And that's it. The interaction comes from the player, and in this case, the board, I guess you could call it, that is drawn out in front of the player. That's about it. It's played. And when it comes to games, that's the most important thing, is that games are played. There is an aspect of interactivity between the player and the game itself. The next version of this is game-based learning, where we add a little bit of a layer to the game itself. So in this situation, the player is still there and the game is still being played. There is still that interaction, there is still that aspect of play. The difference here is that there is a learning element baked into the game itself. And the best versions of game-based learning, in my opinion and in my experience, and I would love to argue with anybody about this if anybody would like to, not, maybe argue is not the right word, have a conversation about this. In my opinion, the best learning objectives don't necessarily have to be baked in, they just have to be brought to light. So if I go backwards on this, and if we look at this board, this is the previous slide, we can see that there are numbers that are there. There's the 1 to 10. If we look at the next slide, those numbers are still there. However, some attention is being drawn to some different numbers. The odd numbers are in blue and the even numbers are in green. And this is that aspect of game-based learning where the player will still play the game. There's just some attention being drawn to an aspect of the game that might not have been at the forefront of the game before. That's game-based learning. And this is where I get really excited about it and where I'll probably start going off the rails a little bit later in the presentation. But this is game-based learning, and this is what the big focus is for us at SAS Polytech with the game-based learning working group, and in Saskatoon with the Spark Lab and the game-based learning initiatives that we're working on. Gamification. You can see in this situation, there is still a player, and it's a little unclear, but you can see that the name of the player, kind of off to the right there, is changed to employee. And gamification is a concept where we take some aspects of a game. You can see the board, the hopscotch board is still there, but it looks different. So we took some aspects of that game, and now we're putting it into a non-play situation. So gamification is where game aspects get brought into a non-game scenario. So this is things like, and you can't read it, and I wish it was a little bit clearer. When I went through the test, it was, I don't know what happened. The employee goes through this board, and at certain intervals, they've gained enough points that they receive a trophy. They are not playing anything. Could they? For sure, but gamification inherently doesn't have a play aspect to it. If we take Kahoot, for example, if anybody's familiar, or any sort of survey-based gamification tool that's out there, nobody's playing a game, we're just answering questions. It's a quiz, and there are some game aspects built in. Timers, points, rewards for being quick, that sort of thing. That's an example of gamification. If we go back another slide, game-based learning, it's the play still happens. And the game is kind of echoed throughout all three examples. Now, you can ignore the stuff that's along the top. I'm reusing slides from previous presentations. One of the things that gets asked a lot about game-based learning at SAS Polytech is what games are used. And I use COTS games, or commercial off-the-shelf games. We don't have the resources at SAS Polytech yet, one day maybe, to create or design our own video games. So what I do, in my experience being a nerdy child, I know a lot of video games. Child, teenager, adult, nerd, I guess, all the way through. I have a lot of knowledge in that industry. So my comfort zone is with the commercial games that everyone has access to. And there are a few different reasons that I use commercial off-the-shelf games. There are a lot of benefits that come with them. There are a couple limitations. I'm going to briefly go over them right now altogether. The first one is that the games are designed to be engaging. And I would argue that this is probably the biggest double-edged sword. They're designed in a way that the companies spend all of this money and put in tons of time and effort to make these games appealing to large groups of people because they want a huge player base. They want people to buy this game, this artifact. On the other hand, they're really difficult to put down. And as a learning tool, that can be really great because that play aspect of the game is very easy to leverage as a learning tool. The downside to that, sometimes you get situations where students don't necessarily want to put the game down and step away from it and enter the real world again. The second big benefit to using commercial games is that they're adaptable. Because these huge companies want to get as many players as possible, they try and make the games as far-reaching as possible. And we can look at games as a form of media with a really wide scope, and we can see there are many different genres. There's role-playing games, there's first-person shooter games, third-person shooters, strategy games. There's a whole bunch out there. Then, when we pick one genre of games, if we were to drill even into just sports games, there are tons of sport games out there. There's games for all the different sports. There's cricket, soccer, football, basketball, racing. What did I just see? There is a yacht driving game out there. Driving? Sailing? Sailing. It's sailing. You don't drive a yacht. And anyways, even within a genre, there are even more options to tailor this learning tool to your audience. And then if you were to pick a game, let's say football. This is the example I like to use. Madden is the go-to name for a football game. Once you're in that game, there are even different game modes. So you can play online. You can play by yourself. You can play as an existing athlete. You can create your own athlete. You can be the manager of a team. All of these different options. And as a learning tool, that's really powerful because then that one game, if it does have to be purchased, and here we are talking about open educational resources, that game can then be applicable to a number of different people with a number of different interests or desires to play in certain ways. Third reason I love using them is they're available. They're everywhere. In a lot of situations, they're free. The most popular games in the world are esports games, and of the top 10 esports games based on viewership in the world, only one of them has to be purchased, and it costs $15. So they are available, they're out there, they're fantastic. Not biased, I don't think. Maybe I might be a little bit biased. They are fantastic. And because they're engaging and adaptable and available, chances are, as a learning tool, when you bring it into your class or bring it into a course, they are going to be familiar with students. I used Minecraft a couple weeks ago to do a time management lesson for Med Lab Tech. Med Lab Tech? Katrina's like, yes, that's what I said. Walking past her office, yes. Med Lab Tech students. And going into that situation, none of them had ever played Minecraft. Every single one of them knew what it was. And with a learning tool, that's really powerful. It really bridges a gap when bringing something new into a course or into a learning experience. And that kind of dovetails into this game-based learning center that we have in Saskatoon. So we have a computer lab that has been upgraded with some gaming computers. That is where right now I'm facilitating game-based learning lessons. An example is commercial pilots. This was the first one that I ever did, and this was a communications lesson using a game called Portal 2. And in the game-based learning center, the licenses have already been purchased. And so again, coming back to that open educational resource, this would be something that instructors at Sask Polytech in the Saskatoon campus would be able to access at no additional charge. Outside of the Saskatoon campus, if this interests anybody else, let me know, and I would love to try and figure something out for you with some of those free resources that are out there that exist in the gaming world. The second kind of largest group of students that I was able to work with was food and nutrition management. Again, it was a communications-based lesson with a different game that focused a lot on the customer service-based communication that food and nutrition management students needed to learn. Pharmacy technicians was the third group to come in. They did three-hour sessions for a total of 9 hours across a month and a half, I think. This was, again, communications with a focus on empathetic communication. So some situations were designed to really put students out of their comfort zone and then switch places and reverse roles so that they had an opportunity to see what certain situations felt like. And then commercial pilots came back for another round where we tweaked the communication requirements a little bit and added a couple different aspects to make things a little bit more industry specific. And these are some other groups that have come in, and there have been a couple more since this presentation was made. And I think that's the end of my slideshow. The main thing for instructors at Sask Polytech and everyone here today to hopefully that I can get across is that these resources are here and available at no cost to Sask Polytech instructors. The licenses that we have on the Saskatoon campus are just some of the licenses that are available. Minecraft, as an example, every student in Sask Polytech has a Minecraft account. Oh, thank you. Just a black screen. Sorry. The Minecraft accounts are, all of Sask Polytech students have Minecraft accounts. So if this is something that seems interesting that you might want to engage with, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself. I think that's it. Did I go over?
No, you're good. You're 5 minutes. You said you have 5 more minutes if you want it.
Ooh.
I think you should mention a little bit of what we're doing with those core, the development of the core skills stuff, because I think that'll touch everybody.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things, thank you, that I was supposed to mention when talking about all the different courses is that we focus on essential skills and game-based learning. And thank you, Katrina. The reason I was talking about how things are baked into a game is modern video games rely on a lot of essential skills for players to be successful. There has to be a certain level of communication for a competitive video game playing team to be successful. There has to be a certain amount of critical thinking that has to happen when a player is going through any sort of puzzle-based game, role-playing game, survival-based game, anything like that. So using these commercial games in a learning environment, all of those things, just like the hopscotch example, just needs to be brought to the forefront of what the students are doing. And all of a sudden, this media that was for entertainment only becomes a really valuable and really powerful learning tool with very minor adjustments, so to speak, or very minor layers added on top of it. And so we've been focusing, and I've been working with the library. I've been lucky enough to work with the folks in the library to bring a lot of these courses and a lot of these skills to the forefront of what we're doing in that lab. And we're going to be moving ahead with trying to bring in specific trying to bring in groups for specific skills, lessons and workshops, whether that's leadership, teamwork, communication, or collaboration, critical thinking, stress management, time management. Oh, how many did we talk about? We got 8. We narrowed it down to 8, I think.
Yeah, we've got 8 core skills that attach to every program within SAS Polytech at this point, and the ability to obviously expand that into more. But that is the path we've kind of taken. And the library is involved. And again, we're lucky to work with Justin too, because I love watching what he does. And it's really great seeing the students come through. No, but serious, I hear it. I'm right next door, so I hear it all day. It's a beautiful space to have so much activity happening in. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Hey,
Sorry,
Justin, final thoughts?
Kristen put a question in the chat. I think that's a great question. I think we're gonna leave questions until the end.
Mm-hmm. But we
Okay.
do have some resources that we can pass, Kristen, so we'll address that at the end for sure. Closing thoughts for Justin? You good? Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Justin. That was great and a really good introduction, definitely, to the game-based learning thought process and how things are figured out, because it is very much, there's lots of terms thrown around and we don't always all understand everything. And it's good to be in that environment where we get to learn more about how it happens and why the experts in game-based learning are focusing on certain things. So thank you. All right, let's see here. We will move on now. So again, thank you, Justin. We have 2 more speakers with a slight addition to this information that Justin has given you guys. So we're kind of building on that first step. And so next we're going to hear from Matthew Van Noos. Now, Matthew is a registered nurse and he's an educator here at SAS Polytech as well. He specializes in perioperative nursing. He has a high passion for accessible education, and he's working very hard to create inclusive and anti-oppressive curriculum. And so he does like to support diverse learners, which is a very important thing in today's world. And he does include like additional language, English as an additional language students within that bubble as well. So a very holistic view to supporting all diversities of learners within our space. And so he advocates for innovative teaching methods and incorporates technology to engage learners and foster success. So we're very happy to hear from you today, Matthew. He's going to discuss a little bit about this 5HP application, or sorry, H5P application, and how he's using it in his classroom.
Great, thank you. I will share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Not that one. That's my talking notes. Good. Can you see my Brightspace page? Yes, okay. So thanks, Justin, for giving us some information about gamification versus game-based learning. I'm going to show it. And Justin said, like, we don't necessarily have the resources to develop our own games at SAS Polytech, but we do have a few tools that we can use. So regardless of how you delineate gamification versus game-based learning, my feeling is, as an educator, I want the goal to be make learning more interactive, more engaging, and we can do that through incorporating some game-like features. And games, to me, why people like them is there's a challenge, but there's also that instant gratification that they get. They get instant feedback. If you're doing something wrong, the game lets you know. And then you adapt, you learn, and that's part of the fun of them. So one of the ways we can do that at SAS Polytech is something that Donna helped me understand. I was actually working through some OER textbooks and stuff. We were looking at that, and then she said, "Hey, what about H5P?" I said, "Well, what's that?" And it has opened up a can of worms, and it's been really interesting. I'm far from an expert in it, but it's something I'm learning, and hopefully I can start to share some of that with other people and get them on their journey. So what H5P allows us to do is we can create some pretty dynamic and interactive learning experiences. Things you've kind of seen, like, interactive quizzes and accordions and things like that we've seen. So what I have here is, this is from our MDRB program. So it's part of the perioperative program. And this is what it used to look like. And when I say used to, and I'm not deprecating at all what was done, it was with the tools that we had. The information is still great. So we've got accordions we're going through, and it's one way of presenting information. But if you want to get into more of like a game-based sort of idea, it's taking the same information, and anyone who's an expert will know this isn't really a good MDRD. I frankly typed this into the DALL-E and said, give me an overhead image of this. So if I was going to present this to students in a more formal way, I would maybe get a better picture. But anyways, it's the same information we just saw in the accordion, but just in a different style. So it has you go through, this is actually called the game map in H5P. And it goes through, and we're clicking through it, and there's no real, this is just kind of a very surface level. We're not getting that instant feedback or any challenge with this, right? So this is good. I mean, it looks nicer. It's a nicer way to present information. But then we can build on that. And this is something I've just been working on. And this is actually getting more into the game style. And I called it a Brightspace Quest. And this was, I'm creating something that people could use to orientate to Brightspace. So again, I used, hey, can you give me a fantasy style map from top down? And this is what it spit out. I did give it the color of SAS Polytech's hex code. So you can see there's a little bit of maybe branding in there. But it goes through, and this is our first challenge, and it's going to be, if you want to customize the Brightspace look or experience, you click on this and you can check it, and you continue to go through. So I won't spend all the time going through this, but I think it has about 10 stages, and you end up at the end here, and you get a congratulatory message and whatnot. So a little bit, it's got challenges, but the nice thing is it's low cost, like it's low impact or anything for the student, right? They can keep retrying, they can go through it, and they can make mistakes, and there's no impact on anything. It's not for marks. So that's one way we can start to bring in some gamification. Some other things that I found in H5P, and you can argue if this is gamification or not, but so this is what we used to have, and it's some drag and drop with medical terminology, and it was what it was, and it served its purpose. But H5P just is kind of the next step. It's the evolution that I see. So I have a few things here. I can't really demonstrate it because Zoom's using my microphone and speakers right now, but essentially, you could have this, and instead of just reading the text, because sometimes I find with, especially with in English as additional language, reading it, and then it's a little bit different than hearing the word. So this would be a way that they could test themselves, and they could listen to this and then repeat it, and then has here, oh, I got it wrong, or I got it right. Okay. So that's a different exercise that you can use. Now, one of the really interesting ones is, so hearing it, but then actually pronouncing it back. So H5P has this activity in it where it'll access their microphone, and it'll say, what instrument is this? And you can push to speak. And I find it's actually pretty good as an English speaker. I'll give you, that's where I'm coming from. But again, it lets them retry, and then they could eventually get it. And they're like, okay. So what I would do is have the exercise before where they hear it, and then they can move on to this one and actually pronounce it back. Okay, so I've got images where they can do that. But you can even have a question. So rather than just an image, you can say, hey, what instrument would you hand if a small artery was bleeding? And then they can answer that back. And then there's always the standard drag and drops. Okay, this is what the H5P version would look like. So this is one of the older ones. This is one of the skills they have to learn is receiving a phone call and what to do with it. They start with etiquette. So that was kind of cool. It had a door and it opens, and then they go through and it asks you some questions. Okay. Now to move on from that, you can actually have a phone call, a simulated phone call come through. They listen to it, and you can either have them type back what they hear. That's what I asked them to do here because it has some jargon in it, so that they're hearing it, understanding it, and putting it into a context. Okay. And the nice thing is they can check right there. They don't have to wait for the assignment to be submitted and think about it. And again, it's low stakes. There's no marks associated with this. They can make a mistake and retry and then refine that. Lastly, so my classes are asynchronous, so I use kind of like update videos or lecture videos in a sense. So if you're utilizing that, there is a way that you can make them a little bit more interactive. So rather than just having the video go through, what you can do is, there's a few things. You can put in a table of contents that have time markers in it. So, if they come back to it and they're like, oh, what was the exam going to be? So it takes you to that marker. And then you can also have embedded links into it. So if I'm just talking about an assignment, it goes through, so I'm starting to talk about it here, and you can't hear it, but then you can have actually links come up in your video that will then take you to what you're talking about. Okay, so this isn't really gamification, but it's just showing some of the H5P capabilities that I quite like. And then within it, I don't have examples of it, but you can actually then start to integrate assessments into your video, multiple choice questions, true, false. There's lots of different options. So anyways, just some ideas. I'm far from the experts, just starting to scratch the surface here. But I'm really excited. It's something that's available to us at SAS Polytechnic. You just need I think a Pressbooks account or something like that. But my advice is get in there, get to learn the tools, because you'll have to see, and like there's so many databases of things. I found it hard to kind of come up with the ideas, but this is from looking through, seeing what else is out there, what other instructors are using, because it comes from the open education realm, right? So these things, there's thousands of examples out there that you can pick and choose and pull. Hey, I like that. That's a good idea. So you could either sometimes, if the copyright, you can use it directly, or you can at least use it as your like starting point. So get in there, see what's out there, start thinking like, how could I adapt that to my class and my teaching? So yeah, it's gamification, making learning gamified doesn't matter to me. It's just presenting information, but we're making more of an experience, which is kind of exciting. So hopefully the students, with that, they're more engaged. They retain information better because it's that like learn and test, retry, practice kind of thing. And then hopefully apply it in meaningful ways. So thank you for listening and kind of following along with me, but I'll pass it off to Evan now.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. That was great. It's interesting to see the back end of how some of that stuff is created, because I find that I've seen a little bit what you were talking about, but from the front side as a student inside like a smart textbook. And so seeing it built directly into Brightspace and not be part of an external purchase that we had to make as students is a really, really nice thing as well. And I would say that that's something definitely worth exploring and continuing to grow here. So that's awesome. All right, last but not least, we are going to hear from Evan Cole. So Evan, welcome as well. He is a Saskatchewan Polytechnic. He's an instructional designer with us. He has worked as a sessional lecturer, as an educational technologist in professional development, and he was a former high school teacher as well. Again, another human who is incredibly passionate about learning and folding technology into that learning to make sure that we can enhance that learner experience. And he really does love creating engaging learner experiences. My first real conversation with Evan this year actually was about something that he was doing in Regina. I got to play with a little bit of the tech. We went to Saskatoon. It was really cool. I was playing with a sword on the floor, but it was virtual sword and just like a controller. Felt like I was swinging the real thing. So it was really cool. Anyway, just my little fun with that. I love having fun with these things when they're bringing stuff in for us to learn about. So yeah, Justin's got a master's of education in educational technology and design. So again, very passionate about what he's doing, and he is also going to talk to us about H5P and some of what he's been doing with that. So welcome, Evan.
Yeah, thank you. So I like to try to break stuff. But in order to do that, I have to make stuff first. And so this is very fitting. I live in this world where I follow something called constructionist learning theory a lot of times. So Seymour Papert, I don't know if anybody's interested in his work, but essentially you learn through making stuff, which means there's a lot of mistakes and a lot of stress testing things either on purpose or inadvertent, and then you have a lot of maybe some gaps and some things along the way, but you make stuff and you see what you learn along the way. So this is something that I was messing around with a little bit. We were, as an instructional design group, interested in branching scenarios last year a lot. Like, we were talking about them a lot. Not that we're not interested in them now, but it was the thing that piqued my interest that week. So I was curious about with H5P about the branching scenario tools and how I might get it to work. And I was also curious about I'm a big escape room person, really enjoy them. My wife had purchased a digital escape room for her Girl Guide group, but it was Among Us themed, and so trying to get back into that open education, open resources. So I wound up going to Pixabay and finding some animals, some farm animals. So I'm going to present to you, instead of Among Us, Amoong Us, a farmyard experience escape room. So I've got just hosted in Pressbooks right now, so I'll full screen this. We're going to go in and start the game. And so this is a nice game. The great thing about this branching scenario tool that's in H5P is you can put in a whole pile of different other H5P interactives along the way. This right here is a course presentation module that's in there. So it's a little bit of like a slide deck. And so we can go through and we can learn about the farm, learn about the scenario. I did a poor job of renaming everybody and trying to like make it work, and I wasn't putting too much thought into the scenario itself as I was trying to mess with the tool a little bit. So there's a fence that got broke. The farmers blamed an animal, but the sheep saw what happened and they knew it wasn't the bull who got blamed for it. And so there's some context for us. So we just kind of scroll through there. I've been throwing some pictures and things in there. That's great. Let's head to the map. And so I'm using now some hotspots to learn more about what's going on. So we can see there's the sun. That's great. We can learn about the fields. Oh, there's the home quarter where the farmers are at. We can learn about the field up front and so forth. We can click around, explore, and learn about our landscape a little bit. I haven't played with it, but I'm sometimes curious if I could throw a iframe module in there and maybe throw in a proper 360 tour, or something like that as well. And so that might be something where you could mash things together, or maybe beforehand do a 360 tour of a space. As I walk through these, I think about linking back to that perioperative nursing, back to the exploring a space. It's like, well, wouldn't this be cool to be linking a game map inside here, or doing a 360 tour and then using a game map as maybe some highlighting some points. Anyway, so now I need to start and choose where I want to look for clues. I'm going up to the corner, so I can maybe start off in the barn. I can look at this and say, ooh, what's this a picture of? Is it moss? Oh, no, I didn't get that. Let's try again. Not seaweed. Okay, it's broccoli. Okay, good. So we can go through and we can learn about some of these things. And so I've got some food-based items here. That's great. Back to the map. I can go through, and so all of these different interactions are all kind of similar. This one's a trivia module. And so we're just going through and asking questions. And so this one is set up so that if you get a question wrong, it bounces back to the beginning of the question. So you have to get all of the questions right up between. So if you're trying to work on something where there is a memory component, that's great. I'm trying to remember my order. Oh, geez. Good job. Oh, maybe I got it wrong. I can't remember it. Anyway. Yeah, I got booted out, so I would have to start over. Anyway, just gonna. I got trapped inside there. Anyway, so I would go through. I'd collect clues, and I would get a bunch of information. Eventually, I would go back to the farmer, and I'd make my guess as to who it was. Again, using quizzes and trying to build in a bunch of stuff. Really interesting. I can embed that into a Brightspace course if I want to. I can embed it in any website really that'll take an iframe if I like. On the inside, this is kind of what I've had to map out. And I can scroll around, and so I can go through and I put an item in by inserting content from the side. I link it together. I add in various nodes, and then I can link the nodes back to various other, I give each one an ID, and I can link back to them. And so then I build out this kind of map about what's going on. This was not so bad for me to do because I was cloning something that existed already and I was stress testing a little bit. If I was going and building a scenario, I would probably work with a content expert and try to come up with a situation. We might rely on Copilot or something like that to help generate a scenario. And one of the cool things that we can do using Copilot or something similar is we can then ask for a branching scenario situation or a simulation of some kind, and then we can ask it to develop a branching tree for us. And in those old like MS-DOS style breakdowns of using ASCII art, it will build out a branching web for you. And so it will build the map for you if you like. Not something I've tried yet. I've seen it at a few conferences, seen a few people try them. And so that's one way I might go about and building this and bringing it together. So this has been Among Us. One of the, again, going in and I can add in right now, I've got course presentations, which course presentation has a whole pile of different kinds of activities I can embed within it. With branching scenarios, I can just put in just text or images or image hotspots, interactive videos, and or just straight video on its own. So those are all great options. So something like this, if you're trying to, again, thinking through a situation where maybe it's nursing, maybe I'm thinking too working with pharmacy technicians on some things. Maybe we're doing a 360 tour of a space to get students oriented to it. And then maybe we walk them through and have them follow through an adventure, maybe using game map, or maybe using branching scenario if they're trying to solve puzzles along the way too, if you want something that's maybe non-linear. Game map is really good for linear structures. But if you're looking for more open world exploration, the Among Us will allow, or the branching scenario might let us kind of explore and go in a bunch of different directions. So something like that I think is really interesting if you're trying to make students aware about maybe different safety things in certain areas and you want that open world kind of a concept. Evan, who do we approach for more information how to create the branching scenario using Copilot? This is new for me. I think it's just something I saw in a conference, so I think it's just however you engineer your prompts, right? Like I think you would feed it in your prompt a bunch of things you're trying to get students to learn. You'd ask it to create a scenario that would include these aspects and this kind of an order, or maybe a loose version of a story or a flow that you want. It would develop the scenario, and then you would ask it to generate a game map or a branching web or something like that based on the story that you feed it. So yeah, and this is kind of the back end of what Pressbooks looks like for those who are kind of curious. H5P is HTML5 package. It needs an engine of some kind to run it because there's HTML, there's JavaScript, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be mashed together to make it all kind of work and pop up. And so Pressbooks is one of those If you're somebody that has a WordPress site, you can get a WordPress plugin to do that. If you have your own Moodle server somewhere, you could do that as well. For us in SAS Polytech right now, we're using Pressbooks to generate these because they're in the library, so they live within the organization. We're embedding back into Brightspace that way, and yeah, it's creating some interesting things for us there. I'm going to stop sharing. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Evan. That was great. I don't know how everyone else thought about it, but I definitely learned some things. And I'm happy to see we've had some questions come through the chat. So this is definitely the time for that. Now, I'm just gonna pop up here. So we had a question actually, Justin, at the beginning of yours. Do you have a list of the gaming options that are your favorites? And you had responded to that, but I'm wondering if you have anything that you'd want to say about recommendations on finding recommendations.
Well, the recommendations would be, don't really have recommendations as we don't have a giant library of available titles for SAS Polytech. We only have 6 at the moment. So those 6 options are posted on the working group site. I can share that link in the chat so that everybody can have access to it. It's going to go through a bit of a facelift, but the link will stay the same. So I'll post that there. My number one favorite video game learning tool is Minecraft. Minecraft is just so wildly adaptable to so many different skills that you may want to introduce or practice with any age group. And the fact that everybody at SAS Polytech has it, that would be my number one recommendation, if I could say that.
Cool. Thank you. I would say Justin's not wrong about that. So the Minecraft has a mobile option as well for that Minecraft education. So I've actually put it on my phone and I play through the lessons just for the sake of seeing what's out there on the education gaming side. I think that's pretty cool. Quick note, if you didn't see the pop-up, Donna has put the poll through to get some more feedback for today, but we do still have time for questions as well. Again, thank you to the presenters. You guys were answering as we go, which is awesome. I'm curious if there's any burning questions anyone's held on to until now.
Well, I have a question, but I'm going to answer it. So I think one of the questions that comes up is around licensing and use of things like H5P. I can't speak so much about Minecraft and how it's being used, but with H5P as part of our Pressbooks module, it's openly licensed. And so there is a license that's provided with the H5P modules. I'm still exploring how you might do something different if that's not exactly the license you want, but generally, most H5P modules are available for people to use and to share with the standard license. So if you're interested, you can go on to Pressbooks, pressbooks.directory, and they've got something like 8,000 books right now, and many of them have H5P modules in them. So you can actually go and just get a listing of the modules they have in a subject you're interested in, and download the little file. And then if you have a Pressbooks account, you can upload it back into your own book you might be working on and try it out. So a lot of this, like, it seems, it might seem a little daunting to go and to create something brand new, or maybe not. Maybe everyone's super excited and they'll want to do their own, but there might be something that already exists that you would be able to use. So if you're interested in doing a little more H5P exploration, we could either set up a session if people are interested and sort of demonstrate how we would do that. We're not going to do that today, but it's relatively easy to do. And there's really a lot of very creative people out there who are making amazing H5P modules. So there's also a borrow scenario in addition to a create scenario with those.
That's awesome. Very much open source and sharing promoted, which is great, and definitely ties into the open education resources. So that's great. Awesome. Any other questions? You guys don't have to be shy. You can just come off mute if you have them. I'm not standing on ceremony.
Well,
No?
I know the answer to this one too, but I'm just gonna ask if somebody wants to play with H5P, just as an example, since we're sort of featuring that today, how would we do that? I can ask the panelists that.
Probably if you want to just get your feet wet and just try a little bit, you could probably go and talk to an LT trainer, and they have in learning technologies, we have a sandbox book. So folks like Justin in Saskatoon, Justin and David, Regina, we have Keenan, Kurt, and Myra, and in PA we have Angela and Kathy and Wayne, and Moose Jaw we have Annette and Josh. And so if you talk to one of those folks, they have admin access on Learning Technologies has an H5P sandbox book where it's a sandbox. It is a place for play. And so you're welcome to come in, talk to them and get some author permissions, and then they'd set you up in that account so that you'd be able to go in and create your own activities. You can copy other folks' activities and try editing if you want. Reusing an activity is pretty straightforward. So you're welcome to go in and try that. If you're not looking to talk to an LT trainer, an off the books way of getting access to H5P activities, there's an unofficial software tool called Lumi, Lumi, Lumi Education, and it is an offline editor for H5P. I think some of the activities kind of broke a little bit recently. I don't know if they've been all updated, but if you're looking to just try some things again, thinking about high stakes, low stakes, medium stakes, very low stakes, nobody's going to know that you've downloaded Lumi Education and tried and try to make your own things. What's cool about it is that if you do build offline and save it and you say, this is really cool, I want to try this and see what it looks like in Brightspace, you can export it or you can save it there. It'll download as an H5P, a .h5p, which is it's just a renamed zip file. And then when you go to Pressbooks, you can just upload that thing you built and then continue to edit it in Pressbooks instead of in Lumi. It doesn't allow you to overwrite or anything like that as you re-upload. But you can get the base of your work done offline, and if you like something, you can bring it into the ecosphere, as it were. And then if you have something that you say, I don't want this to accidentally get deleted, I do want to use this in my course. Maybe this is a situation where you're talking to library folks about getting set up with your own Pressbook. If it's something maybe that you want to share with a department, maybe there's a bunch of people in your group that want to work together and share a space. That's great. If you're looking to just have one or two interactives, you can talk to LT people as well, and we can get you connected. We have a book that we use for production for when we're building courses and things that we're embedding and things that we intend to keep forever and ever and ever. So we can help get you linked in and get your content in there.
Nice. Thanks. Matthew, I'm not sure if you want to add anything about ways that people can kind of jump in and get their feet wet with this stuff.
The way I did it was by accident, really. Getting introduced to OER and then finding H5P from there. But like I said, if you can find some of the databases that are out there that have examples, that's just the best way. That was my stumbling block too, is I didn't know where to start. There were so many to choose from. They're so interesting. But you can filter by your discipline and your topics, and then start to kind of build some ideas from there, and yeah, go from there. There's lots of great examples out there.
Yeah, I will say that if you find them out in the wild, a lot of them will have a embed button you can grab and post and put into your classroom. That's completely fine. There's risk associated with that because it's like a YouTube video or something else that you're bringing in from another place, is that if they edit it on their end, they're also editing in your course. So if you find something you like that's on, say, the eCampus Ontario repository or in BC Campus, and you say, I really want to use this in my course, hit that reuse button, download it, bring it over to our Pressbooks and upload it. And even within our institution, if you're looking to say in nursing, have the same activity in 4 different courses, but an instructor might want to edit it to make it their own. It's probably worthwhile re-uploading it 4 times for each different course, just so it's unique to that course, and so that if someone else edits it, they don't accidentally impact someone else's course development.
That's a great tip. Yeah. I could just see that happening. Oh, that would not end well for some people. Yeah, that's awesome. Mini follow-up question. I see we still have some quiet. I was hoping someone would jump in, but within that, then I wonder if Justin, if you want to maybe mention ways, if people are interested in the game-based learning stuff beyond just reaching out to you, that they can explore a little bit on their own before coming to you, so they have a bit of a basis of information or idea about how to tie into their specific work.
That game-based learning hub page, I put the link in the chat. That would be the first place to go. The second thing that I would suggest is to play a game. Play a game and think about what sort of skills you're using. I find that when introducing this concept, it is a lot more powerful to have somebody kind of go through the motions. So if you've got a game on your phone, if you've ever done Wordle or any of those New York Times games that they put out every day, play a game and think about what you're doing and try and see it from a different lens, try and see it from an educational aspect. I promise it doesn't ruin the game. It's not one of those things where all of a sudden the game becomes learning. That's, we don't want to do that. But if you look at it from a different perspective, it can help you kind of understand what can happen. And it can kind of bridge that gap.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, with that, and I think scrolling, I checked, I think we got all the questions out of the chat. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll turn it over to Donna if she's got any last minute things for today. But thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's been great hosting you and sharing some information for sure.
Just a suggestion that if you have a couple minutes, if you wouldn't mind filling out the poll, it does help us in terms of determining whether we're kind of on base with where we're taking OE Week. And if you have any suggestions for sessions you would like to see, you don't have to wait till next year. If there's something that's of interest, we might schedule it before then. But yeah, this is the end of OE Week. So I hope that you've enjoyed the sessions that we presented and maybe taken advantage of some of the other ones that have been available out there. There's been a lot. And the recordings will be posted to our YouTube site. And I will be, if anyone's registered, they will receive a notice with the registration when that's available and where it's located, including any other resources that were included in each of the sessions. So thanks so much for participating in OE Week this year.
Thanks very much, folks. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully everyone stays warm and dry.